Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. Let's talk about math and kickball. We'll talk about kickball, we'll talk about the basics of it, we'll talk about how math is involved, and we'll go from there. So, when it comes to kickball, it operates very similarly to baseball by design. But that being said, the general idea is you have one team, kicking, one team pitching, and you alternate throughout the innings, which change based on outs and getting set outs. So the idea is someone pitches the ball, someone kicks. You try to round the bases if you're the one kicking, or if you're already on there when someone is kicking. And if you're on the other team, you're trying to get them out. So here's the thing, right? Just on a basic level, uh, since we're dealing with the game and we're dealing with scoring points, there's math involved just on that base level. But there's more to be said here, right? Because there's math and the idea of kicking the ball itself, the field that you play on, and so many more things. So let's talk about that a little bit, or let's talk about those things a little bit. So there's math in the field that you're playing on, you know, what it's composed of, its size, its the scale, the scope, you name it. And there's math in the ball and what's happening with that ball. There's math in the shape of the ball, what it's composed of, how full that ball is, and if there's rules and regulations involved with that, the specifics they got to match. But not only that, right? There's math in what you're doing to that ball, what you're trying to do, right? There's math in the force that you're applying to that ball and where you're trying to send it. You know, the angles of which you're hitting, right? The positions that you're taking when you're hitting that ball, and what's happening to the ball is it's flying out, right? It's moving at this different speed, this different speed, that different speed, hitting this angle, that angle. Is moving from position A to position B, right? Basic stuff, but math nonetheless, physics nonetheless, right? And just on that base level, there's a lot of math that can be discussed. So I think that's pretty cool, right? So there's math in the ball, math in what's you're doing to the ball and what's happening to the ball, but also math in what's happening to you as you're doing that ball, right? Because you're moving from this position to that position to hit the ball at a certain angle with a certain amount of force and at a certain speed with an idea of what you want to happen to the ball, whether it happens or not. Right, and you're trying to make it so that people can't catch that ball, or so it's hard for them to get it. You're trying to either get to that first base or try to get everyone around, depending on how you're playing and where you're at strategy wise at that moment. So, and, as you're doing this, you're considering where the players are, where your teammates are. You're considering your abilities, and meanwhile, on opposition, they're considering where you're at, where their players are at, and what's happening with the ball. And so there's a lot of math and the coordination of that all, the logistics of it all, how it works, how it functions, how it flows, and it's all happening pretty quickly. And I think that's pretty cool. And then there's math and the money that's involved. Like building the fields, buying the equipment, if there's funding, advertising, or marketing involved, or sponsorships, depending. There's math and all of that, how it all functions, how it all flows. And so I feel like you can take any other areas that I mentioned and you can expand from there. Like kickball, like any other game, is a game of shapes and of motion. And there's math across the board with both of those things. A lot of calculus, a lot of physics, a lot of geometry, and because we're dealing with humans, a lot of biology, a lot of chemistry involved. There's a lot of things going on in just a very short amount of time. And there's math across the board with how the game is played, on what is played on what's happening with the ball, and different players. And there's stats that get accrued and predictions that can be made with those stats. And there's math across the board. And I think it's cool. And I dig kickball. I always have. It's a fun game. That being said, I don't want this to be too long, so I'm gonna end it. And I'll say I'll see you in the future. If you want to add anything, please do.